normal template. I had to put that.
I'd like to call the January 10th regular meeting of the City of Post Falls Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Will you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll get things going and start off with roll call.
Stephenson.
Here.
Carey.
Here.
Kimball.
Present.
Davis.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Schlauhauer.
Here.
Hampi.
Here.
All right, ceremonies, announcements, appointments, and presentations. We have some important items to cover. Is that correct?
Yes, it's National Bittersweet Chocolate Day. So, yes, that's why you saw the basket on your way in. So hopefully you grab some to celebrate the dark chocolate.
Absolutely.
It's for everybody.
Already did.
It's for everyone.
I took yours.
Yes. All right. Amendments to the agenda this evening.
There is, on item number 3, the unfinished old business, item A under that section. You see the continued recommendation portion for the development impact fee update. That does not mention that it was supposed to be an action item, so we have to move that to a future date. So there's some options that we were looking at. We could move that to the next P&Z meeting, which would be in February. We also we're looking at January 31st as a potential date. It's a Tuesday at the end of the month, last day of the month. If we did that, we would look at potentially canceling the February one, so we can move the minutes to that. And so just wanted to bring that up as an option for you guys to discuss.
So, commissioners, would you rather see that rolled into a regular February meeting or Tuesday, January 31st? Would that work to go through that?
It would work for me, so
Yeah, it'd work for me.
whichever would work for me.
That's fine. 31st is fine.
Okay? I think we're all in favor of the 31st.
We may have to do something in February just to memorialize the resolution, but which we can contact you at a later date on that. But
Okay.
Okay, so 31st, we'll look at noticing for that.
Okay.
Do we need a motion for that? To move to a date certain?
No, what we're going to renotice it anyway, just because we don't want to daisy chain the noticing of continuing it.
Okay.
Notice the notice of the notice. All right, declaration, conflict, ex parte contacts, or site visits. Commissioners, anything to declare?
No.
Hearing none, we would move to the consent calendar.
Yeah, action item A is the meeting minutes from December 13th, 2022. Item B is the zoning recommendation for the Niagara annexation, file number ANNX 2211. Item C is the reasoned decision for the Sinclair Edition special use permit, file number SUP 224.
Okay, commissioners, hopefully you had a chance to take a look at that. If we have any questions, if not, would entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for vote.
Hampi.
Yes.
Schlauhauer.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Kimball.
Yes.
Carey.
Yes.
Stephenson.
Yes.
All right, citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission on an issue that is not on the agenda. Persons wishing to speak will have 5 minutes. Comments related to pending public hearings, including decisions that may be appealed to city council, are out of order and should be held for that public meeting. Do we have anyone here wishing to speak citizen issues? Okay, seeing none, then we have unfinished old business has been moved forward, so nothing, correct?
There's nothing there, correct?
Okay, which brings us to our public hearings. So we'll go ahead and open the first DBAT facility zone change. Ethan, it's all yours.
Thank you.
Evening, Commissioners. Ethan Porter, one of the planners here with the city, here to present the DBAT facility zone change. for this application, the applicant was Stephen from Fusion Architecture, and the owners of the property are SLCK Commercial Properties. They're requesting that you provide a recommendation to City Council for the zoning designation of industrial from heavy industrial on approximately 2.13 acres. Here you can see the project location. It's right along Commerce Loop on the east side and then south of Celtice Way there, and this is on the eastern side of our city limits. Looking at the land use for that area, it's vacant currently, and there's nothing to note on the physical characteristics or the natural features on site other than it's over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer, and the city would be the water and wastewater provider for this location. Looking at the zoning, here you can see that the dark gray is the heavy industrial, which is a legacy zoning. We no longer have that zoning district within our city or allow anybody else to acquire heavy industrial zoning now. And then the light gray is industrial zoning. You can see that the area, the project, or the subject site is hatched there in black. And then that yellow on the bottom is residential. There is a railroad between that heavy industrial and that residential zoning there. Just, this isn't really pointed out, but in the previous picture it did. Looking at the first review criteria, we look at amendments to the zoning map being in accordance with the future land use map. So, and the future land use map designates this site as commercial within the Maplewood focus area. So I'll go a little bit more into the future land use as well as that focus area in the upcoming slides. So looking at the future land use map, we can see that that red is the commercial, the light, or the pink I should say, is the limited commercial, and then you have industrial in the gray, transitional in the blue, and then residential, low density residential in that yellow on the south there. So clearly the hatched black area, the subject site, is within the red, the commercial zoning, future land use designation, excuse me. So looking at that future land use designation of commercial, basically that category provides a mix of commercial, retail, professional office, civic and cultural uses. Residential uses may be permitted by the implementing zoning district. Active uses are emphasized along key block frontages to focus pedestrian and commercial activity. And basically looking at that implementing zoning district on the bottom there, I did bold the per focus area because what they're requesting for industrial does align, which I'll go in the next slide, in that focus area for the implementing zoning district. And looking at that Maplewood focus area, we see that on that bulleted points on the bottom, promote infill development. It's a commercial industrial uses along Celtice Way, so being just south of Celtice Way along Commerce Loop there, this would utilize that Celtice Way arterial basically to run east and west and connect up to wherever it needs to go. So, and then again, this is a vacant lot, so promoting that infill development would provide us and get us a little bit of frontage as well as some uses in the city that aren't there right now. And then looking at the zone change review criteria B, we look at the accordance with the goals and policies within the comprehensive plan. So looking at goal number 1, grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls, providing community prosperity and fiscal health. Basically, that section underneath, there's this descriptor within our comprehensive plan showing or discussing actually the implications of this goal, and it's seeking long-term prosperity. Residents understand that the need to build economic diversity, capitalizing on access to neighboring job centers, as well as developing a strong business base within the city limits. So that descriptor is not going to be on all of them, but the goal there, the comprehensive plan lays it out as such. And so looking at the goal 7, we see that it's stated as plan for and establish types of quantities of land uses in Post Falls supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability, as well as goal 14, which is involve the community of Post Falls and all local government planning and decision-making, which is what we're doing now. Looking at some of the policies, we look at supporting land use patterns that maintain or enhance community levels of service, foster long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain and enhance resident quality of life, promote compatible, well-designed development, and then implementing goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, related master plan and or facility plans, which a lot of this is laid out in your staff report and kind of discussed a little more in detail how applicable or not applicable these may be. But we look at policy 2, apply or revise zoning designations with careful considerations of factors including future land use mapping, which was discussed, compatibility with surrounding land uses, infrastructure and service plans, existing and future traffic patterns, and then again, goals and policies found within and related within the comprehensive plan. Policy 8 does encourage the infill development, which I touched on a little bit more. Currently it's vacant and it is underutilized currently, and so this would help zone change it to something that it can actually be developed and meet our city standards. So looking at policy 11, prioritize location of new industrial development in areas that provide the close proximity to major transportation facilities, that being Southeast Way. Siting near existing industrial uses where possible, which this area, as you saw, is industrial already surrounding it. And then the cost-effective access to utilities and services, since services are already provided there, or would just be extended to the site. I believe it's already stepped to the site. And then the ability to minimize trucking through residential areas, which is kind of a big one, which is why I pointed out that railroad corridor south of them, which does separate that residential low-density use south of this site from the other industrial uses. And I believe I go in the staff report as far as providing a distance of what that distance is between them. Policy 12 talks about ensuring new industrial uses near residential areas do not create noise, odor, air, or visual pollution beyond that normally associated with residential uses. So again, that's a little more outlined in the staff report as kind of mentioning that location, that proximity, and where they can't access the residential through that area, through Commerce Loop. Looking at the review criteria C, zoning is assigned following considerations of such items as street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features. Commerce Loop is classified as a local commercial roadway, and then Southeast Way is classified as a principal arterial roadway, which does help that flow, trucking, as well as kind of those industrial uses there. Future traffic patterns to and from the site are benefited from the proximity to Southeast Way. That would distribute the traffic from the subject site to Highway 41, I-90, Coeur d'Alene, as identified in the city's transportation master plan. So it does have access to those locations from Southeast Way. Looking at the mobility and access a little bit more, since it's near Southeast Way, and then there's a local commercial roadway for the Commerce Loop, we look at the higher speeds and the lower speeds and the more access. So we can see that the typical land uses for industrial, they require typically the principal arterial, which Southeast Way, as I mentioned, would provide that arterial roadway. Looking at review criteria D, commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications. Commerce Loop and Southeast Way can support commercial zoning as well for that subject site. And then review criteria E, limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential, which is not applicable and is not part of this proposed zoning. And then industrial zoning is typically assigned for properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes and may be situated away from residential zoning. So mentioned already, but Southeast Way and Commerce Loop provide sufficient access based on the city's transportation master plan and the proposed zoning that they're requesting. These are the agencies that were notified for comment, and of these agencies, we received back the Yellowstone Pipeline. They commented no impact, no comment, and then Kootenai County Fire and Rescue reserved comment for the city's review process, and then the Post Falls Police Department remained neutral, and then the Highway District, Post Falls Highway District, did not have a comment. So I will stand for any questions you have for staff at this point in time.
Any questions?
How much heavy industrial is still left? I mean, because we can't use it, there's no use for it, right?
Correct, yeah. Any heavy industrial zoning that's still out there as a legacy zoning will require to be rezoned, which is the main purpose of this hearing tonight, is they want to be able to utilize it and they're want to develop on it, but in order to do that, they got to change the zoning. So the zoning would have to be changed first. And as far as how much heavy industrial in the city, I haven't ran the numbers, but in this area, they have the two lots there just south of them that are heavy industrial here, and there's
Okay.
a little sliver on this northern part as well.
So was it ever permitted?
In the past, I believe, if John, does that?
Yeah, at one point in time, the heavy industrial was a zone that was an allowed permitted use, but That was quite some time ago. And then they established a code saying that no additional permits can be allowed on a heavy industrial, which then forced, like this area, undeveloped areas, to get a rezone, to get any sort of permits or vested rights for development.
Okay, it just wouldn't have made more sense to just make it industrial? I mean, if it's non-usable, you just take the property and say you can't do anything with it now, right? I mean, it's non-usable as heavy industrial if nothing is permitted in
Yeah, I
it.
can't go back in time and figure out the rationale why they did what they did
Okay,
about 20 years
okay.
ago. But
It wasn't under your watch.
yeah, it wasn't, yeah, I
Okay.
mean, so, I mean, it was
Okay.
before I was here, one could contemplate that maybe the path was, when the time is right for development, people will naturally go through the zone change process. But to go through 20 years ago and rezone people, maybe that was perceived as being more of an issue than why make it an issue at that point in time.
Okay.
So once again, I'm just
Yeah, you're just taking a stab, right?
Yeah,
Okay, it
why
happened
they
a long
didn't do it
time
back
ago.
then.
And, because I just don't know that, I mean, I'm sure we maybe have, but I don't remember it coming before us.
It's like remnant zoning that was never fixed until people who have that zoning actually come forward to fix it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, okay, all right,
Yeah.
okay, all right. I
And
was
the city, when we change things like this, the city doesn't generally go out and rezone property. It's like city-initiated rezones. We wait until they come forward to initiate a rezone.
And I guess I can see that. It's just when you take a piece of property and you say it cannot, there's no use for it. You can't do anything with it. You kind of have to, I mean, you're taking away all of its value.
Well, and plus, some of the uses that are in a heavy industrial typically are like smokestacks, your steel refining companies. They're your more heavy pollutants for, you know, the communities. So I can only guess at one point in time, there was a discussion to say, well, we want a cleaner industrial, not quite the heavy industrial, and let's evolve our zoning code. And they established new zoning districts, and then they put in the restrictions. So you weren't, yeah. I mean, so odds are what you're doing in industrial and or commercial, you're actually increasing the opportunity. So you
Yeah.
have less opportunities in the heavy industrial, and they
Yeah.
generally are less valued type developments.
Which, agreed, like I said, it was a little confusing that it even exists right now if there's absolutely no use for it.
You
But
guys
it-
have any idea what used to be on the site? There's some
That particular
foundations, I
one?
think, out there, and
I don't know, it was,
I'm gonna guess heavy industrial.
yeah, I don't know what the use was though, like as far as like the business.
Other questions, comments?
I thought John knew everything. This is pretty disappointing.
I do say, in the state with landowners' rights, I mean, it does make sense for them to come to us. Otherwise, it just sets,
Yeah.
rather than just blanketly saying this is what's gonna happen. So, anyway, if there's no other further questions for staff, we'd invite the applicant up.
He is actually on Zoom.
Okay? If he's on Zoom,
Who's this?
then who's up at the podium?
I'm here representing Shannon Horn,
Okay,
and
Oh.
I believe our architect is also on as well.
perfect. So what I'll probably have you guys, if you could both introduce yourself, give your name, address, and then we'll get the clock going, and you guys are good to go.
Do you guys know how you're gonna break it up? Are you gonna do the introduction, then transition it over to Rex?
We can, yeah.
Either way, Luke.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Rex, and I'll fill in the gaps.
Okay. My name's Rex Anderson with Fusion Architecture in Spokane, Washington. Address 221 North Wall Street, Spokane, Washington 99201. I've been working with Luke and Shannon on the development of this property, and over the course of the development, it became apparent as we've learned here that in order to develop it, we've had to rezone the property. We went through and provided a kind of a response, I believe that's in the packet, kind of providing follow-up to why the project meets the goals and priorities, you know, of the Post Falls Municipal Code. And additionally, I think that Ethan's introduction to the project kind of speaks to how in line the location and the zoning address the future for the city of Post Falls. I think the construction type will also meet the industrial building, the industrial zone, and should fit well within that. Luke, what else do you want to fill in?
No, I think you covered it well. And again, I'm Luke Greensides, representing Shannon Horn, address 2643 North Howell Road, Post Falls. And just really, we want to develop this land and feel it'll be a great addition to the community. And obviously with the hurdle of the heavy industrial, that's just a request to adjust that so we can move forward with this addition to Post Falls. So.
Okay. Commissioners, questions?
I do not.
Anyone?
No.
None at this time?
May I?
Yes, you have the time. You still have 13 minutes.
Pardon me, but I guess the commissioner's comment with regard to, I guess the rezoning or the blanket rezoning, I felt like was an interesting point. I do understand the land rights, in Idaho, and how it may be imperative for the property owners to present their case to the jurisdiction. I guess it struck me as not an inconvenience by any way, but just interesting that maybe there isn't a pathway for the old zoning classifications to be phased out. That was all. I felt like that was an interesting conversation and something that possibly could be investigated further.
Okay, duly noted. I appreciate that. Excellent. Any further questions for applicant? Okay, all right. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. Public wishing to speak, neutral, in favor?
We have none.
Okay, so there'd be no need for rebuttal. So, commissioners, here's the question. Do we have any questions for staff? Anything else that we need to further investigate before we move to our world-famous list?
Nope, I don't.
Nope. To the list, Ethan.
So let's look at some talking points. Number one, amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the comprehensive plan's future land use. Everyone agree that
Pretty much.
Yes,
this is pretty clear?
yes,
I think
absolutely.
Ethan covered it as a part of the focus area.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else to add on this piece? No? Okay. Number two, amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and the policies found in the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan. I think we pretty much just covered it. Ethan did a good job. Any additions, things to add?
No.
Okay. Let's move to number three. Zoning assigned to following considerations such as items of street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land use, community plans, geographic and natural features.
I think this fits in with the existing development pattern, and it's just really more of a matter of housekeeping than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone disagree?
No.
Okay.
Fits well with the traffic patterns too.
Okay. Let's move on to number four. Commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classification.
Oh, well, they're not requesting either.
Right.
So not applicable.
Pretty much not
Yeah.
applicable. Let's go to number five. Limited neighborhood commercial low-density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from higher intensity urban activities, ensuring that adequate land is available for future housing needs. This also does not apply
No.
in this particular hearing. So let's go to number six. Industrial zoning, here we go, is typically assigned to properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes and may be situated away from residential zoning.
Yeah, I think that it's got access directly onto Commerce Drive, which is a commercial route, and which butts right onto Celtics Way, which is an arterial. So I think that fits that absolutely perfectly.
And it does have buffering in between the residential zone that is to the south.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agree. Anything else to add?
No.
Okay. All right, any further discussions? If there are none, and someone feels ready, I would entertain a motion at this time.
It's abandoned,
Is that what it is?
pretty much.
From anyone.
Trying to give other people a
Okay.
chance.
I move to recommend approval of, I need to find the number here, sorry about that. I wasn't totally ready. I move to approve the DBAT Facility Zone Change, file number ZC226, finding that it meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code, and as outlined in our deliberations, and direct staff to prepare a reasoned decision. Change from heavy industrial to industrial.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just to clarify, it's
Yes.
a zoning recommendation to city council.
Did I say move to recommend approval?
You said a reasoned decision versus a zoning recommendation.
We're gonna
I-
skip them this time.
Oh, yes, I move to recommend approval, yes.
Do we still have a second?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, hearing none, we'll call for a vote.
Stephenson,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Schlauer,
Yes.
Hampi.
Yes.
All right. Earlier it was mentioned housekeeping, and speaking of housekeeping, we're gonna go on to our next action item, which is Post Falls Title 18A, Idaho Street Housekeeping Ordinance. Mr. Manley, take it away.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. John Manley here, Planning Manager, reintroducing this Title 18A housekeeping amendment. So this was actually brought to both the Planning and Zoning Commission and Council in 2020. The file number at the time was at TA1 2020. Due to the circumstances that were going on in 2020, this kind of slipped through the cracks. The commission makeup is different and the council makeup is different. So in talking with legal, it was thought that it'd be best just to redo this whole process and actually get the ordinance recorded this time in a timely manner. So this
Timely
file,
manner.
so this file number for is TA 226, and what the proposal is being requested by the City of Post Falls Planning Department. We are looking at for you to review and recommend approval for the recommended Title 18A amendment, which is requesting the following in Smart Code. That's 18A, that code section for Smart Code. You have in subsection E7, we propose that the ground floor of any structure constructed on a lot with frontage on Idaho or Spokane streets must be used for non-residential uses. So it used to state just Spokane Street. What we included was the section on that's zoned. It's only the section that's zoned Smart Code 5 and Smart Code 6. And the purpose is so you don't get apartments right on the prime commercial corridors for mixed use.
You don't have a map of that.
I'm going there. So here we go.
Boom.
Tell
Look at
me,
that.
boss. I want a map.
So really at this point in time, you have the, what's purple, we actually have added north of the freeway on this corner, some SC5. But south of the freeway, most of it is along Spokane Street. Here you do see a spot of some pre-existing CCS. That's where the medical, you see a spot of some pre-existing CCS. That's where the medical facility is, just on the southwest corner of City Hall. You do have on Idaho, this little purple stretch between 4th and, looks like the rail corridor here, that is zone SC5. And so I got a call from the developer there that was, hey, where's this in your code? I went looking to the code, I'm like, should be there. And they're looking for it because they are counting on it being there, and so now it enlightened us, and now this is why we're here. We're facilitating that request. So not only is the city requesting it, so is the is that developer there right now at this time. Does that answer the location?
Yep.
And so the purpose of kind of Smart Code and the Smart Code 5 and the configuration for this is, you know, on the left-hand side here, you see a typical auto-centric type building configuration where you have your commercial in the back, you got your parking lot, and you have your street in a mixed-use corridor. Typically, you got a multi-story building with your street, your parking in the rear, and generally you want to have some active uses along that ground floor. And so getting that non-residential uses on that ground floor and ensuring that through code is important. So we noticed this. This is the agencies. We heard comment back from the YPL. They had no comment, and the Post Falls Highway District had no objection. And so that's the comments there from the public agencies. Do you have any questions for me with what's being proposed on this housekeeping to Smart Code?
John, I just got to tell you, I'm very disappointed to know that arcades are no longer places for kids to go
I know
waste their
you're
money.
hoping for some street side arcade play, but
I know. Thank you for educating me on that.
It's a sad day. Any other questions, concerns? Vicky Jo, you said you do remember this coming through? Yep. Any other questions, comments? No?
You go back to the map real quick for me, please. Thanks.
Okay.
Isn't there, like, just north of the freeway, is that included? I'm assuming it is.
just north at that
On
location.
Spokane Street?
Yeah, we rezoned this. Call me lazy. This was the map that was in the previous public hearing.
John,
I know.
disappointed
I
again.
didn't update it, but I felt I could describe it. So that one location is SC5 on that northwest corner.
Yeah, because it's already approved for a bunch of apartments.
It has on the west side of Spokane Street, there was a preliminary plan to put a mixed use use on Spokane
Right,
Street.
right.
And then behind it, on the west side, they were thinking about putting some residential units consistent with the SC5.
Right. Okay, I was
Sure.
just curious.
I should also clarify that Spokane Street is included in the current code. This is just to add Idaho.
Idaho Street.
Yeah, and it's only in the SC5 and SC6 areas.
Right.
So it's not the whole stretch of Spokane.
Oh,
It's
okay.
only in those areas zoned SC5 or SC6, which we don't have any SC6. So in essence, it's only the SC5 zone.
Thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
No.
Again, it's a housekeeping matter that's been seen before. Since the city is the applicant, we don't need to bring up the applicant because he's already standing there. That being said, do we need to go through our discussion points on this one, or?
Public?
It's a legislative action, so there's no
Yep.
no real discussion other than whether or not, I mean, there's discussion as to whether or not to recommend it.
Okay. And I'm guessing, because I usually search to see if you have little white pieces of paper sitting on your desk. Do we have any public comment either in favor, neutral, or against?
No.
Okay. Just in case you tricked me and hid it somewhere.
Hey, I thought about it.
All right. Okay, commissioners? Any further thoughts? Otherwise, I'd look for a
No.
motion.
Makes sense.
It makes sense, yeah.
I would move to recommend approval of Idaho Street Housekeeping Ordinance Text Amendment TA 22-6. Yeah.
Works.
I second it.
Short and sweet. We've got a motion and second. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, hearing none, let's call for a vote.
Hampi,
Yes.
Schlauer,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Carey, yes, Stephenson.
Yes.
All right. Administrative staff reports.
None.
Commissioner comments? Anything for the good of the order?
You know, I have this really old, it was several years ago. It's kind of a residential zoning concept, and it's got all the different, do you remember this? This is anyhow, do we have anything that's updated like this? Basically, it just shows the different zoning districts and then what's allowed in those, what's allowed outright, and then what is allowed by conditional use, and then what's prohibited. It would be nice, I know that this is old and it's outdated, but it would be helpful when we're doing a zone change to be able to just look and see, okay, because I don't always remember what is, you know, there's a lot more to it than, so anyhow, if at all we have something like that, I would love to get a copy of it. It doesn't have to be the one with pictures, it's just, if you can just.
Mine would need pictures.
I would like pictures, but if you don't have pictures, that's fine.
And maybe maps.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
your only
exact-
copy of that?
What?
Yes, but I think she'd be willing to share it for,
Yes, I can share this. I wrote a few things on it, but you can just, I got this.
I remember that.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had some kind of a,
I probably got
A
it somewhere,
workshop
too.
or there was
Yeah.
something
I
that
can,
you
I can look for that. We may have it somewhere in our,
yeah,
archived.
maybe you can
Archive.
just make a couple updates or whatever to it and, but, because I don't know.
Few updates and hand them out
Find it in the
tomorrow.
budget.
Well,
Or
and
just
yeah,
maybe a PDF file for, you know,
yeah, that would be
keep it
great.
simple.
It would be helpful for me anyhow.
okay,
save on color printing costs, you know. Okay,
well, thank you.
all right.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments?
See you
Okay,
tomorrow- see
Chief,
you
thanks for
tomorrow night,
joining
maybe?
us this evening.
See you tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.